Hi, I want to make this video about momentum and more about this passion subject and this deprivation subject. So obviously, momentum is obviously something that pushes us forward. That's part of the ego gratification and part of the propelling mechanism that makes this life game work and how it makes it propel something. It's a matter of momentum. The more you feel like you've accomplished, the more motivated you are to do something else. When you're at ground zero, you're not moving very fast, but the higher you get, the faster you're moving, and you're moving very fast, the higher you get. So the higher you are, the more likely you're to accomplish something, sort of like the happier you are, or the more that you feel gratified, the more like you feel you're accomplishing something, the faster you're going to move. And that's all we're doing is we're in a momentum game. We're constantly moving forward. And that's a concept that can be applied to this very concept of movement. We're moving somewhere. A car can be a good example, a good analogy. The faster you are, the faster that you can get. You can't just go from 0 to 100. That's sort of like the spontaneous concept, or something like that, where something just magically happens. The faster you are, the faster you're going to go, and you need to start from a lower place. You need to be at 45 before you reach 50, and you need to be at 50 before you reach 55, and the higher you get in those increments, so you need to be 40 before you go to 45, 45 before you go to 50, and obviously the faster you go, the faster you're going to speed up, and obviously you have to go past each one of these numbers to get speeding up. And obviously you have to go past 45 to go 40 to 50, and you have to go to 50 to get 55, and you have to go past all these numbers. You have to get higher and higher before you can get higher and higher and higher. You have to go past the lower numbers before you get to the higher numbers. So the faster you get, the higher you go, the higher you can keep going. So you start out low, you start at 0, and you keep going faster and faster and faster until you reach whatever speed you are. And obviously the faster you go, the more RPMs in the vehicle, the faster you're going to be speeding up and moving forward. And obviously it takes going 59 to go 60, and obviously each one of these numbers go high, sort of like going from 45 to going to 50. And this is the whole mechanism. You need to get from lower to lower, and relative to 45 to 50, you need to go past. Obviously, the momentum creates you, that lets you go faster to go 50. Obviously, it's an internal mechanism that builds up momentum on the car, and based off of the terrain that you're driving the car, the environment you're driving the car on. And so it's building up this mechanism, and it's going. You have to go to 45 to go to 50, and obviously build up momentum from 45, and you go to 46, 47, 48, 49, and then you go to 50, and you jump to 60, and you get to 60 fast, just as fast as you got from 45 to 50, because you're already going faster. And it keeps going on like that over and over again. And that mechanism can be applied to life, and it has to do a lot with emotions and the game that we're playing, the overall game that we're playing. And the overall game that we're playing is a game of momentum. It's a game of complete frivolous nonsense that has absolutely no purpose, and it's the only propelling mechanism. Obviously, momentum is another way of looking at it. So I want to get onto this object of passion, something I may have not really explained good enough yet, at least. This passion thing, sort of like, okay, you say that you're a really passionate person, and list the thing that you're most passionate about. Let's use sex as an example, because it's something that a lot of people are passionate about, at least to an extent. Maybe not the most passionate thing, but it's something that drives people, at least in a non-negative way, out of a negative. It's one of those non-negative things usually that leads you out of a negative, and usually after you have sex, it's sort of like drinking coffee or being off of a high. You have a low for a while, a depression low, and that's what happens. You're making up for the gratification. Sex is a good example for that as well, because once you reach this gratification and you reach your climax, and then you go down, it's like, oh, I think I don't feel so good, and that's usually what happens. I think sex is a good example for that one. Because after sex, you're almost making up, and you're compensating with your loss for the positive that you created, which you're already creating tension to begin with. So for sex, you have to pay in two ways. You have to pay before, by building up that tension. The longer you wait, the more satisfying it be. So if the more satisfying you want it to be, the longer you have to wait. And the more satisfying it is in the end, the more you're going to pay for it, usually more than likely in the end, by feeling this very strange, I guess, by description of recognizing that this is obviously an example used a lot, and even in, I guess, in my own personal experience with experiencing things like this, or sexual, not like climaxing, or the feeling of reaching some kind of climax. and sex is the best example, so I'm using that. So you feel like a down, like the passion that you create. Obviously, there's some kind of passion. You need to make up for something. You're driven towards something, and the more passion you have, the more that you don't have it, the more that there's a deprivation in you. And this this obviously has to go with momentum too, because it's a driving force. Passion is one of those driving forces, and it's an emotional word. It's a psychological word, and it's this thing that drives us. This deprivation is a momentum drive, and depression, all sorts of things. It's all part of the momentum, but also there's things that can obviously degrade and discourage that momentum, and it's usually in the excess amounts, or like not when you go too long without eating, it's almost as if you're already given up. Things like that. So obviously, back to the example, I was saying you have to wait longer to get the better satisfaction usually, and usually the greater satisfaction, the greater the low you're going to experience right after that. And that sex is the best example, because I think that's something that a lot of people can relate with, and it's obviously the best example because it's very ubiquitous. So yes, it's a driving motive mechanism. We're obviously always pushing forward, always moving forward. Obviously. Physically, and obviously motivationally. Obviously, it's a motivational mechanism moving forward. It's something that's obviously constantly pushing us forward, and I think that explains it enough. Momentum is obviously the game we're playing, and I already like the car and like all sorts of other things, and the passion, the things that push us forward. It's about finally, and obviously the subconscious recognition that we're here to procreate. All the sex that we do, all the things are obviously to push us to have sex. The momentum is to build up this force. The ego gratification, the gratification of all these other things is to push us forward. To create momentum so that we do satisfy these desires in the end. And it ends up getting us to our goal. Then we become disposable, and then we're done. So I think that explains it enough, and I do appreciate it. And thank you, and until next time, bye.